Week 5 of the spring session had a familiar ring to it. The Lance government was back on its heels. Budget cuts were being challenged. The private member's bill to change our Conflict of Interest Act was pulled, not surprisingly. But even in defeat, the Premier was unrepentant. And our 4 island MPs decided to pick a fight with Health Minister Corey Deagle. Is it fair or political hypocrisy? All that and more on Myers and MacNeill, episode 6. Let's get talking. Stephen Myers, episode 6, MacNeill and Myers, and you get to start with a brag. You foretold that Brendan Kern would drop the proposed legislation, and that the government would back off. You also suggested that Premier Lance will be gone by the end of the summer. We don't know that. But tell me, are you feeling a little bit like Fiddler McDonald, the prophet,
I don't
this
know
week?
I don't know if I'd ever say I was as good as Fiddler. Fiddler's probably the absolute ace when it comes to this stuff, but I do follow politics pretty close, and we're reasonably good antenna for this stuff, I guess.
Was there any doubt that the government would back down, and were you surprised by the fact that even when backing down, Lance sort of indicated that he's not done with this file?
Yeah, I'm not surprised they backed down. I mean, the public had turned, lots of people had turned. It was sour in the session. It kind of ruined the week on them that week. So I'm not surprised. I don't think you'll ever see it come back, but that's just my guess.
I'd be very surprised, but you never know with this government, because this government just doesn't seem to have a political antenna. I was interested in this week's session because for 2 days, the Premier was hammered over mandate letters, and it became clear to me that the people advising Premier Lance don't have a clue what's going on, because Prime Minister Carney used a 1-page mandate letter for the whole of the federal government. And apparently nobody around Rob Lance thought that was important enough tidbit to hand to the Premier. And if they had, he could have completely deflected and shifted an attack that came at him for 2 days.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've said a number of times that he needs political help, like politics, like real politics help. I didn't know that, but that's an area it's so small that would have saved so much hammering. And I will say on the mandate letters, I don't know why they're important. Like, I don't remember them ever being a thing in my whole life until Justin Trudeau. And I think that, I had one, but I made sure all the things I wanted were in it. So I don't think they don't have any the value that the Liberals are letting on that they have. That's for sure.
I think the value is it sets priorities for a new Premier.
Sure, makes sense.
Because we don't really know what Rob Lance still believes in.
Sure, but as you touched on last week, he said he wanted his ministers to be able to lead their areas. So if that is in fact true, then those initiatives should be coming out of them, just like he has it set up. That's what I would believe. Like if he honestly believes that, and I doubt the Premier's office staff will actually let that happen, but if he honestly believes that, then they should write their own mandate letter. I would 100% agree.
Yeah, I think any Premier who sort of abdicates responsibility that much to ministers is going to be a Premier who's probably short-lived, because you have some ministers in every government who are capable of driving forward a file. You have some ministers who are sort of comfortable talking publicly about a file, and you have some ministers who are just happy to be in cabinet with the car.
I would 100% agree. Which one was I? Which one was I?
You were the drive through. By the way, I found it a little ironic when Hal Perry was going after Boyce Thompson on spending, that he never brought up that every cabinet minister, every leader of the opposition, every speaker has a government issued car.
Yeah.
Or at least a personal car being paid for by taxpayers. So if he's looking for real savings, is it a business class seat, or is it, do we really need to be delivering that perk today?
Well, and I think that one of the things that I'm not overly surprised didn't get touched on from our podcast last week, but I've been saying that maybe some of those things need to go away with an austerity budget. And I think that a temporary lowering of the pay for MLAs should go along with it. Not one party brought it up. One party. I don't expect government to bring it up. The Liberals didn't bring it up. The Greens don't bring it up. And I'll tell you why, because they want all those perks too. So
sure they do.
There's a little bit of, but yeah, it's great you're fighting against cuts that government's making, but no one's willing to bring that forward. And the public would be all over it if they did.
It's easy to take shots. I mean, I think cars are a thing that we could have a valid discussion about. Things like it is interesting. I have a differing view on whether cabinet ministers or premiers should be allowed to sit in business class on international flights. I have a memory. Peter MacKay, as Minister of Defense one time, was hosting Rice and his Mexican counterpart in Ottawa for big meetings. And the meeting was on CNN. It was international. And at the end of the day, Peter MacKay had to jump on the same flight I was on back to Halifax, and he was in row 14 in the middle seat. And I thought, that's sort of crazy. But in terms of just your capacity to do work, if we expect ministers and premiers to go overseas, to fly to Southeast Asia, to fly to Europe, to fly anywhere like that, you should have the capacity to actually have the best rest possible and the capacity to do some work for 10 hours. So I understand the politics of attacking it. I'm just not sure in real life whether it's a very smart idea.
Yeah, I think I would tend to agree with you. I think that it's an easy politics because it upsets people. Like, why do you get to fly business class? But I also know getting off a plane and having 2 hours sleep and having a meeting 3 hours later is a damn hard thing to do, and haven't had to do it a number of times. Like, I've had like 3-day trips that were 5 time zones away. Don't even get your body doesn't even switch, and you get no sleep on the way over. I'm not sure that I one time got bumped up to business class for free coming home from Europe, and it was absolutely amazing. So it's probably pretty posh for government to spend the money on. Like, it was real cutlery. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
I had a steak. You sit in the
Wow.
back, you're lucky if you have a sandwich.
That's true. I always wondered why we can't use points in government, but that's not a question for today. What's the fallout of backing down on the Sydney
I don't
issue?
think there's any, to be honest with you. Like, there'll be some of these lingering things about Rob being able to make decisions that are going to stick to him, and it's more of a long-term thing that has come. And this is just one of the many things that has happened along the way. But we talked about this in one of our other podcasts. Like, we're in the TikTok era where people are like, "Give me the next thing, give me the next thing, give me the next thing," and I think that they're just on to the next thing.
Yeah. Did you think the government had a better week last week?
Well, it wouldn't be hard, but yeah, your your comparator was pretty low. So, uh, obviously, yes, they had a better week. I honestly didn't think that the Liberals had a great start to the week, anyways, because they had the Tories on their heels and all this chaos, and then they just came into the week and weren't able to keep it going for some reason. And it's just, you look at it and you're like, oh, you had a gift and you gave
Yeah.
it back. You
Yeah.
said, I don't want this
Yeah.
gift. I don't know.
Daycare,
Yeah.
$1.4 million cut will have significant impact. This trickle down or trickle out, cut by cut by cut by cut. It's not really benefiting government to do it this way, is it?
No, and well, I don't know if it was this week or last week. Hal Perry asked Jill Burridge, would she table all the cuts? And she never gave him a straight answer. He asked her a couple times and she never gave a straight answer. And it's like, put them all on a piece of paper and table them, because this is going to kill you slowly. And I think, like, we had the bikes. Then before that settled down, we had the books. And then we had the Wellbeing Alliance, which didn't catch a lot of fire. We had the early years. And at the end of the week, there's housing cuts. So the cuts are trickling out, because I know I did this in opposition where the organizations are finding out about the cuts and they're calling opposition and saying, they cut me. I can't believe they cut me. So this is going to kill government slowly. Put them all on a piece of paper. The media can't possibly cover it all at once. The opposition parties can't cover it all at once. Just get them out there. And I mean, like, this government, I would say, is probably in crisis. How deep in crisis, I don't know. But the basis of crisis communication, as you know, Paul, is honesty and all information on the table. So when you go back to Dennis King and COVID, everything was always on the table.
Yeah.
And there was no guessing. Everybody knew what was going to happen. Everybody knew what was happening. And I think that government would serve itself well by just putting everything on the table and say, here it all is then, because we're going to find out anyways. And if they have to take bad news every third day over the new cut that we find out, it's going to kill them.
I think one of the people who has been most negatively affected this session is Jill Burridge. I mean, as a finance minister, she's flown under the radar, probably more than many finance ministers. But this budget that she talks about cuts, but then Health PEI comes in with a travel nurse budget of what, $8.4 million when we spent 40 million this year, and there's no strategy in place for how we're going to reduce that bill by $32 million in a single year. So it's not even a believable budget estimate from Health PEI. So if one of the most obvious is off, are we just going to be in this special warrant free zone in the not too distant future?
Yes, we will. There's no question. Well, but I mean that on that in that case alone, like we'll have $60 million for the travel nurses this year, unless government takes all that money and says instead of putting $40 million in travel nurses, we give this massive raise and we'll be the highest in Canada, and then we'll have no problem employing nurses because we're paying them what they're worth.
Yeah, but it still won't solve it for this year. So I don't know. I mean, if that's the transparency of a provincial government budget, that you can go from 40 million to 8.4 in a single year without any explanation of how you're going to do it in a staffing crisis, I think somebody should be held accountable. And then the juxtaposition is, Minister Burgess standing up and defending the NHL deal, which I will bring up again, although I'm hearing rumblings that we may be thankfully near the end of that ungodly deal. But her suggestion that all you have to do is look at tourism on PEI and you can thank the NHL deal, which is a crock of, because our tourism is up just like every other jurisdiction is up last year because of Donald Trump and Canadians deciding to travel in Canada. That's the driver of tourism.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that that's a Donald Trump collection versus the NHL deal. I think that a lot of people are choosing to do their vacations in Canada that are Canadian.
And I mean, I hope tourism's robust this year. But the price of jet fuel is going up. Flights are being canceled. The price of automobile fuel is going up. It's going to be an interesting year all around.
Yeah, I think that the credit for our raised tourism probably can be handed to Donald Trump, because I think that a lot of Canadians are choosing not to go to the United States right now, and they're vacationing in Canada instead. So I think it'd be really hard to attribute it to the NHL numbers. And, we may see a drop in that this year just because the economy is not the same as it was last summer. So we may have a big shift economically. So be careful that you don't get too deep standing behind one government decision being the sole reason for it, and then have a big dump this year and not be able to explain that the NHL didn't save you in an off year.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where all that goes. Cuts in general, Stephen. Is this how you would think government should be handling it?
Well, this is not how I would handle it, but I mean, obviously there has to be cuts, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of political filter put over some of these cuts, and they're like, oh, this is bad today, and you start backtracking, and you have to backtrack on other things because people, once they know that you'll back down, they just make you back down. Like it's the most simple thing on earth. If you never back down, people are like, well, he's never going to back down. But when you back down, they're like, you can get to them. You just got to push hard. and
Yeah.
and like, I get it. They get up against it. And I get it. Last year was a wasted year because it was a year-long leadership for the Tories. But somehow there had to be a way to do this in a more public manner, or if there was a way to collectively get ideas out into the public by doing public meetings, or to hand it out to a third party and say, we have to get our budget in order, go around to PEI and find out what works. You could have socialized some of the ideas and be like, well, we're not going to cut books because that's going to make people furious. Where now they're socializing them in real time and like, okay, but we're not going to do that. Or like, no, we're not actually going to do that. And it's like, eventually you're going to be like, what are you going to do?
From a practical perspective, though, it's pretty difficult just to sort of say, here's all the cuts we're going to do. Come at us, right? I mean, I understand the comms question would be, can you guess which ones will be picked up on?
Yeah, but
And
Paul, I'll tell you, right?
Children Bunny and Dolly Parton books would be picked up on.
Totally, I totally agree. If you showed me a list, if I had the list in front of me today, I'd highlight them all and say, these ones are going to kill you. Here, do what you need to do with them. But I don't have the list, so I don't know.
So if the government is handling this budget this poorly, and we know the next one is a projected 5% cut, total budget, which is very significant. Do you think they're capable of even doing that?
Well, I mean, they've brought a lot of cuts to programs that hurt vulnerable people this time. So I don't know. You think yes? I think that, yeah, they are.
Or is this the budget that they campaign on? I guess is my question.
Like I said before, I wouldn't campaign on this budget either. But here's the thing: like, government has created this internal review committee on spending, and it's headed up by Jill Burge, who's had a just okay session at best, and that's being generous to her. And the government's been drugged down, and ministers have been beat up over decisions. Like, take it out of there, because you're going to have like four people are going to carry the blame for absolutely every cut that comes down. You're just going to point to and say, well, you four decided
Yeah.
this, you four decided this. Get it out of those hands. Get it out of government's hands. Put it outside where give it to a third party. And do you know what I mean? And I know it's never been done before, but never been done before isn't a reason not to do things. If you take it all inside, you're going to kill government.
30 years ago, Joe Giz did a review of all government
Did
programs.
he?
I don't think it'd be almost 40, I guess now. Jesus.
We're getting old, Paul.
I'm getting there
You
first.
are.
Um, but at some point in time, and I think back then it was some senior members of the public service that led the effort,
Yep.
and that led to things like streamlining health regions and school regions and stuff like that. So is that even possible today, or is the public service so politicized that we need fresh eyes from outside government to sort of take a look at what it is we do and why we do it?
I take fresh eyes, like maybe like a Colin Yonker, who's a former auditor general, like somebody of that mindset who understands government but isn't a part of it, and get some business people, people that are out there that actually, could look at it, but not just like you have to have people from the social side too, so that you're not just making harsh business decisions. You have to understand. Put out a report and make it public, and the public can chew it up, and at least that gives the government the opportunity to say these are the things we wouldn't do because it's in it. Like it. How many times have you seen me do or get somebody else to do a report?
Yeah,
And then we said
yeah.
we implement the changes. Well, like the people who came after me chose not to implement some of them, but it was a great way to socialize ideas, and it was a great way to say, no, experts said this had to be done, not Stephen Myers.
The challenge will be time frame, right? I mean, we're already 2 months into the fiscal year, um, and this thing wouldn't be done in 2 months. It probably wouldn't be done in 6 months because government is so much bigger than it was 30 years ago, or 35 years ago. But that's exactly what we need in this province. We need a sort of a line by line examination of what we do, why we do it, where the sort of the dead weight is. And this is again, it's not a clarion call to slash jobs, but it is a, a realization that we need to be better at what we do. Because here's the segue. When we muck up, we've got 4 MPs in Ottawa who take cheap shots at us. And they basically said, you should be thankful for the crumbs we send down your way. And it is true that we're the province most reliant on federal transfers. But I found the MPs more than a little condescending last week, particularly Sean Casey. I thought there was a level of intimidation directed at Corey Deagle. I thought there was a double standard. I think, if Mark Carney can sit down with Donald Trump and have a civil conversation, chances are Corey Deagle can sit down with the federal minister of health and have a civil conversation. And if the federal minister of health isn't capable of having a civil conversation, there shouldn't be a minister.
Yeah, I don't think Corey will have any trouble having a civil conversation with the federal minister. I think there's no worry there. I will say this, like perhaps my take might be a tad different than yours in politics when you're government in particular, which the Liberals are in Ottawa. So all the 4 MPs are government. And for us here, it's the Tories. When you're government, if you don't have an enemy, you are the enemy. Like if you don't have anybody to fight with, then everybody's going to fight with you. And like Corey picked a little fight with the federal government. They responded. I don't think it really hurt either side. Now they have sparring partners, at least. Like I did it with the city of Charlottetown, like on issues that I felt compelled to fight with. I didn't back away from fights, but it didn't hurt me where I live either, and nor did it hurt Philip Brown where he lives. Like he stood up to me, and that was we both had we were both able to fight. So I don't think it's necessarily bad that they both had a fight. I was a little, I would say, a smidgen disappointed that Rob Lance put out a Facebook post that basically threw Corey under the bus, and I'm like, why would you do that? Like, anyway, I'm not going to get into that, but I feel like,
Get into
well,
it.
I just, the target shouldn't be on Corey's back because I gave him Star of the Week. He did a really good thing. The Tories were really happy. The Tories who want red meat, and I said this last week, were really, really happy that Corey fought with Audible. Really, really happy. And they need to feel happy right now.
If the premier believes in the fishing industry so much, he should have pointed out Redhead Harbor. He should have pointed out Mimimagash. He should have pointed out the complete abdication of responsibility from the federal government on the collapse of our oyster industry and the 100% mortality that we're seeing this year. And this is not just an aquaculture product or an agricultural product. It is the face of our province. You can't see a picture of PEI without seeing oysters somewhere. And Ottawa has walked away from us. Again, if our MPs wanted something to do other than criticize Corey Deagle, why not demand that Ottawa issue an RFP so Wood Islands, Northumberland Ferry, can get a decent ferry? Marine Atlantic, a federal crown agency, just completed an RFP for a 5-year ferry. Because they need one. So what's the difference? The feds fund our NFL. We need a ferry. The Confederation is not stable. It's not predictable. And I just looked at what their MPs signed onto and said, easy shot, but there's a lot of places where Ottawa is just dismissing PEI.
And I guess it goes back to what I said, that it's okay to fight with them over it. Like, no one should be afraid to fight with Ottawa. Like, if you look back in the days where we had premiers that took Ottawa on, they were the more popular premiers that we had. So I think Rob's indication in his Facebook post is he doesn't want to be one of those popular guys.
Well, Rob should point out that the MPs are just factually wrong because the block system that we have today was created by Pierre Trudeau back in 1977. And since that time, the federal share of healthcare spending has gone from 50 to 22 to 24% that it is today. But when the MPs, Sean Casey, crows about a 5% increase this year, and we should be happy with it, the health bill in PEI is going up by 14% this year. So the federal share of our total spend is getting smaller. Rob Lance should be screaming about that, is what he should be doing, because we've had to increase salaries, the biggest cost, but we need doctors, we need nurses, we need LPNs, we need cleaners, we need all these things. And the federal share is just not adequate enough anymore.
Yeah, and I'll just say the same thing again. Like, it's okay to fight with Ottawa if you're the premier of a province. It doesn't, like, and I know Alberta's way bigger, but Danielle Smith basically got her own way. So, you look at other premiers that won't settle, they're getting their own way. So I don't know what it is we want as a province, but we should decide what we want, put a stake in the ground, and try to get our own way.
Well, keep in mind that Rob is chair of the organization that you don't know what does anything it does.
Explain it to me.
But that's the Council of the Federation.
Explain it to me.
It's a term that came up by Jean Charest. He coined the term Council of the Federation, and he was still Premier of Quebec, and I think it was just a fancy way of putting a new title on Canadian premiers. But look, this is something that Canadian premiers should be taking on. It's the federal government is abdicating its responsibility because it holds legal responsibility for enforcing the Canada Health Act and ensuring every component of that act is followed, including equity. It's very expensive to deliver equity healthcare across this country. And the federal government is just handing over the true cost of delivering those services to provinces who don't have the capacity to pay for them. And that's one of the key drivers why there's red ink in just about every jurisdiction, except Quebec, I think, this year, across the country.
Yeah. So basically, like, being chair of that federation just means PEI is hosting the meeting this year. It doesn't mean anything more than that. You don't get to draw up the agenda, or you don't get to lead the conversation. You get to sit next to the prime minister and talk first. And which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But
So you do know some
well,
stuff
I've
about the
sat on
Council
those.
of
They're exactly
Federation.
the same as all the meetings I've sat on at the federal level. And basically, this is the way it works. You go, you can say whatever you want. You can fight for whatever you want when it's your turn to talk at these meetings. So when I met in the energy ones, and we talked about, you know, energy related things that matter to us, like energy security, way back when I kept saying we're not going to have any energy, and people didn't think I knew what I was talking about, and here we are. But generally, and you would have Alberta fighting for Alberta's needs, like pipelines and things that they needed. You'd have Quebec fighting for the things that they want to fight for. These meetings are exactly that. People bringing forward. So like when we send our premier there, we should be saying these are the things that you have to fight for us. These are the things that you should be saying out loud. And I don't know, like generally the public doesn't get to find out what was said behind closed doors. And they have a little press conference at the end and talk about a few things they talked about, and that's the end of it.
But the point is they still could. If healthcare is the biggest pressure point in everybody's budget, and the federal government's share is 22, 24% stabilized, which is better than it was under the Harper years. It took them a while under Harper to stabilize the funding, but it's just not keeping up. And I don't know. There doesn't seem to be any easy fixes for healthcare. I've often thought that we should have a single electronic medical health record across the country. There's a lot of ways that we could standardize stuff like that. But then you look last week and I saw that the bureaucrat ahead of the info highway or whatever they call it, he's making $900,000. I mean, there's just layers of silos on top of layers of silos on top of layers of silos. And the question is, in a province like PEI, how do you deal with that? I know Corey Deagle has whether he officially initiated a review of middle management in LPEI. That was a good question, by the way, last week from, it was Hal Perry, asked whether Corey Deagle had followed procedure and notified in writing the Board of Health PEI mandating the review of middle management. And it didn't seem like that had been done. But, let's hypothetically say that review goes on. But like literally a week after Corey said it, Health PEI is bragging about the need to hire 5 more middle management. And so how do you stop the dog from wagging its tail?
You don't want me to say.
I do, because I'd like you. I mean, you were so good last week, Stephen. And frankly, you're a little disappointing
You
this week.
shoot the dog. You shoot the dog. Like, why do we have health PI? We're a very small province. It's 180,000 people. Go back to the way it was.
Kristi Noem would be very happy with that, by the way. Former head of Homeland Security, who in her book, she wrote about shooting her own dog.
But when it comes right down to it, stop the foolishness. It has to stop. Give us control of our system back. I know you don't agree, but in the 80s here and right up until I think the mid 90s in Montague, we had our own board made up and government appointed them. So they're still government appointees. They ran the hospital. They did the staffing. They made sure that there was doctors here. They took care of the issues that were on the ground. Bigger's not always better. And I think we're proving it here every day that the big system isn't capable of giving Islanders what they need. So give us a small system back where we can at least regionally deliver the services that people want.
Yeah, you know what? I don't disagree with sort of the general premise. I think it may surprise you, but tourism PEI could be the model, although tourism PEI is growing into a silo, of self-interest. But do we need a health PEI as it currently exists? We could have a department and then an executive suite responsible for the overall delivery of the healthcare system, right? And there would be some type of mergers, but you can't tell me there aren't efficiencies to be found between the Department of Health and Health PEI.
No, but it needs to be blown up. There's no one can convince me that it doesn't need to be blown up and started over. And I mean, when you talk about the healthcare system, reinvent it, rethink it, and start over. Like, why we're building on to an archaic system and saying, let's try to expand this and grow it and scale it based on very weak bones. And it was built in a different time for a different purpose, and it doesn't work. And then this is the same everywhere across the country.
So are you talking private sector influence within the healthcare system, or are you talking reimagining how a public system is delivered and managed in this country?
Reimagine it, like start over, to walk away, start in a brand new room and draw it like you've never seen it before. Like there's people that are actually capable of doing that, believe it or not, that can walk away from it and say, if I had nothing, or do it backwards. Like when you solve complex problems, you say, what do I want the goal to be? Like, what do I want at the end of this? And build it backwards. And the problem with bureaucracy is they're always like, we can't do this, or we've never done it before, or that can't be done. We tried it 25 years ago. Like they can't seem to open their eyes to the fact that anything can be done if you put your head down and go to path to it.
Well, wouldn't that be a perfect opportunity for Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and PEI to, dream big and try to come up with something? Because Wade McLaughlin always talked about PEI having the gift of jurisdiction. And the challenge our province faces is as our debt and deficit soars and our capacity to repay lessens, our ability to continue with that gift of jurisdiction is lessened. So shouldn't we as a province do what Jim Lee did 40 years ago, which was negotiate with his maritime colleagues, and the Atlantic Vet College came along, and Atlantic Lottery came along, and the Marine Institute in St. John's came along. And it's four provinces sharing the whole, but not expecting it all.
No, I probably, and I was at an event this week in St. John, and the Minister of Health from New Brunswick spoke at it, and I was quite impressed with him. He's very bright. He's a doctor. He seemed kind and caring and responsive to the situation. I think a guy like that would be open to it. I think that you might find a friend in New Brunswick if you went and talked to the minister there, and probably just need two to start, and then it becomes kind of a thing onto itself.
Listen, when are we getting a cabinet shuffle, do you think? Because we both sort of thought that Ernie was a placeholder. I think the premier was surprised that his fishermen and cabinet completely derailed. But realistically, Ernie I think he's the dean of the house, you might say, and he's got the biggest portfolios. I mean, he had a big portfolio before he added the Minister of Everything title.
Not until the session's over now, for sure. I mean, they can't afford to bring the chaos that it would bring just from opposition questions about having another minister now, but probably right when the House closes and before they go into summer.
And realistically, I mean, I know you've sort of lobbied for Brendan, but realistically, where they should be looking for would be Prince County somewhere, or Charlottetown, somewhere like Susie Dillon, right? Somewhere around Summerside and potentially Charlottetown.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty limited because there's not a whole lot of seats. So it had to be Tyler DeRoche, who I think Tyler's quite capable personally. I know Tyler really well. So I don't think Tyler's incapable of forming. And there's Hilton up there too. Hilton could do it. Hilton's
Yeah.
well liked in his area. He's soft spoken, but if you watch him in Question Spirit, like he obviously knows his stuff and he's doing his own homework on things. And let's be honest, I mean, you said it at the start of this podcast, like there's people who take it and make it their own. There's people that are happy to be there. There's all different. So like, as long as you're willing to listen to some sort of expertise around you to help, I think there's nobody in the caucus that isn't capable of doing it.
Stephen Myers, who's your star of the week?
My star of the week is Carolyn Simpson, and she asked the questions. I thought she was really good about the cuts to daycare. While I didn't understand them, I must be honest, the language was very industry focused. The pedagogical supports, I had to Google it, and most people won't take the time to Google it. And I think she knew that probably a kind of a rookie mistake. So you got to plain language that stuff to get it so that it can be repeated at Tim Hortons. So you cut support staff. It's pretty simple stuff. But I think it was great that she brought it forward. She got a lot of support from the industry because they understood what she was talking about. And I checked just before I come on here, and she has on her Facebook page 442 shares on a petition, which is like PEI viral. So she's taken this and made it her own, and for that she's the star of the week, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's the type of thing that if you're the Lance government you're looking at, you're going, we're losing the fight here, the public fight. My star of the week is Judy Burke, the Conflict of Interest Commissioner. She's not elected, but she is a commissioner, an independent, in charge of an independent body that falls under the Legislative Assembly. And through all of this intentional or unintentional pressure that the Lance government put on that office, during the Can We Get Sydney and into cabinet debacle. She held her own. She didn't cave. She maintained the integrity of the office, which is vital. And she wrote a report last week that was a stinging rebuke in terms of how the government handled this. No one ever asked her. No one ever asked her opinion of changing the Conflict of Interest Act to achieve this benefit. And she also made a point of speaking about how much of an overreach this legislation was. So I think when we talk about important checks and balances in any democracy, Judy Burke showed the importance of her office. Star of the week.
It's good. I think probably my opinion might be slightly different, but I think she's been asked a number of times to help with this situation. And my understanding is she told them it's not her responsibility. So,
well, you should read the report then.
I'll read the report, but I can tell you what others are telling me, and I just told you.
Has anyone in politics ever fibbed?
I haven't. I told people I liked you, and they thought they laughed at me, but it was true. It's true.
Stephen Myers. This is episode 6 of Myers and MacNeill, Because Life is Local. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, PEI Canada. If you're on YouTube, give us a like. And if you like local journalism, subscribe to your local favorite publication, whichever one that may be. This has been good, Stephen. Appreciate it very much.